ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to episode number 334 of the Zombie Train. It's coming out of order because I forgot that there was supposed to be a route review this week. So, oh well. We're going to do this one, and then we're going to circle back to the route review next week. So this is 334, next week will be 333. We're taking a question this week from Matthew Bacon on, on episode 268. His question was, where were all the more major ZT loco terminals, roundhouses, and engine houses, and how did you operate them? Also, did you use narrow gauge? So, I'm not sure I could give you a comprehensive list if I really wanted to, but I can start rattling them off. We had one in Cheyenne that was fairly... We pretty much started with that one. We had one in Denver, which we eventually built up. We had one... crap, where was it? It was on Marias Pass somewhere. I brought it up. It's one of these places. We had a couple of places that we were using, like museums as it. So I'm trying to go up and down this range, but I can't recall where the one was on Marias Pass that we ended up using. I think it might have been. It started with an E. I can't remember the name of the place, but it started with an E. We did use that as like a helper terminal. The thing... Oh, it was Essex. Right. The thing with that was, because the trains were relatively few in number, we would have an engine stationed there, and it would run down the mountain to meet up with a train that needed help coming up the mountain. Instead of being stationed at the bottom of the hill, it would be stationed at the top of the hill so that it could take on a train coming in either direction. So we did use Essex. I won't call it a more major terminal, though. Also, we did use facilities in Salt Lake City once the city was secure. Again, the same thing with Denver. We didn't, we didn't start using there. Cheyenne was a lot easier for running over Soldier Summit, stuff like that. The Moffett route came later. Let's see, what else? Going further east, we were based out of the IRM. We used that. But going all the way east, one of the places that we built up from basically nothing was Quonset. That was our regular old base from the very beginning, and it became quite apparent that having facilities on site would be useful, and we ended up building an engine house and facilities there. We also ended up doing a lot of work with the ocean side of it, because we had ships coming in to dock and stuff like that. I really can't understate the vitality of shipping to the Zombie Train Incorporated, like boat shipping. And we ran into a lot of these problems that you really didn't expect to have in the modern era, because technology had just broken down, with ships getting taken by storms and stuff like that. And so, we had a lot of these ports, basically. The next one down the coast, though, wasn't until Jersey. I think it was Atlantic City or thereabouts, because Long Island did not have enough deep water to bring most of our ships in, and obviously we weren't going to do New York. So we went for southern New Jersey, and that meant we built up an engine terminal there, because that was the kind of thing where, now we're transloading stuff from ships to trains. We need to have stuff there. So, we did Atlantic City. The thing with New Jersey is it's like the most densely populated state, or it was anyway, which meant that it ended up being the most densely populated state of zombies. So, Atlantic City became like an effing fortress once it was able to be cleared. Thankfully, it's almost an island, but we, to be frank, we demolished most of Atlantic City. A lot of the area around where the train station was, we had to take down because we were building it up into something else. The harbors and basins in there, they all got redone. You know, a lot of the buildings, they may have stayed the same on the outside, but on the inside, not so much. Now, getting to Atlantic City did mean we had to go through Philadelphia, and that was always harrowing. So we tried to avoid that, and we ended up using some places to the south. We tried to turn Cape Charles into a locomotive facility and shipping facility, but there just wasn't enough water there. We eventually settled for Newport News, and then down the coast, Morehead City was the next stop for ships. And from there, I'm looking at the map, trying to remember which of these little islands we ended up using, but there was a place in Florida where it was a small peninsula or island that we had track that ran onto. I don't think it was that far south. It might have been outside of Jacksonville somewhere. It was north of Jacksonville. It was Fernandina Beach, but that ended up being problematic because it was just not deep enough, so we ended up going a little bit north of there to where there was an old submarine base and building some stuff up there. But I'm mostly talking about shipping terminals now. You guys are asking about locomotive terminals. There was Spencer, which I detailed what happened to that. We did continue using it, at least in a limited capacity afterward. And that was supposed to be one of the big bases in the south, but it ended up being that with the entire, with the situation down there, despite the fact that there were a lot of small holdouts down there, it was not easy for us to have a good facility. We ended up using the Tennessee Valley, but it didn't have the capacity for what we wanted. Most of our routes ran from the northeast to the Sacramento area. That was our main routes. Also the Portland area. Seattle not so much because Seattle was pretty war-torn. And that's why Marias Pass didn't see a whole lot of trains. Mostly it was trains that would be funneled through Denver and Cheyenne, run over their respective passes, and then run to Portland or Sacramento and San Francisco that way. Or Oakland and San Francisco is what I should say. Yeah, we didn't run too much down south. We had considered Albuquerque or Flagstaff. Albuquerque, the stuff just wasn't there, and Flagstaff, there wasn't enough of it. There wasn't a lot there, obviously. I mean, Los Angeles was a tough nut for the military to crack, but they did do it fairly quickly, and we considered using that. We ended up building it up in a limited capacity, but there wasn't as much of a draw there. The thing with Los Angeles, and, to bring up some of the logistical issues that these metropolitan areas had when you have no gasoline. The best ones are ones with robust public transit, or at least some semblance of it. And Los Angeles really isn't that. And I mean public transit, like electric-powered public transit. We're talking trolleys and subways. And so, despite the fact that the military made Los Angeles a priority, having people in LA, aside from a very small contingent around the most vital areas, wasn't very feasible, because without gasoline you really can't get around it. So, that became an issue. And, because of that, again, we didn't do a whole lot with the southerly transcons. Occasionally you would see a train running through there, but not often. Now, I brought up the IRM, that's outside of Chicago. That was a dangerous place, and I've talked about that before. And we were always looking for, well, what can we do to have an engine facility that's more centrally located? We ended up building a couple of places in Pennsylvania, but that wasn't really central. The Age of Steam Roundhouse was a candidate, and it was used pretty heavily, but it also wasn't very central. And we ended up just sort of bouncing back and forth between places that seemed safe, because trains would typically run from the northeast, where we were, running things, and either, I guess, IRM or Cheyenne or Denver without much in the way of a power change. You might drop an engine and send it back once you got over the Appalachians, but then you'd send that to the Age of Steam Roundhouse. Or if you were going southerly, you would send it to Spencer. But really, we didn't have a lot going southerly. We had, once we got oil up and running, then we had a lot more trains that were going into the oil refineries in the southeast, or in just the general south of the U.S., Texas area. And then we started using, oh goodness, I don't actually know. I don't know off the top of my head. I'm looking at a fairly generic map and just trying to recall. And by that point in time, I had stepped back from a lot of that stuff. I was not in the grand planning by the time we had oil and we were running that thing. But we would run trains down the joint line from Denver, because they would be running north to south from oil fields in the far north of Montana, running south through Pueblo and through Amarillo and through there. So I think we had something in Amarillo which served a lot of Texas, but I'm not sure if that was something that we built up ourselves or something that was there. None of the museums in Texas really were what we needed in terms of facilities. And that created an issue. It was sort of like a locomotive desert. And so we had to build up stuff. And Amarillo seemed like, well, it's a large enough town that we can sort of strip the place for supplies. And it's a major, major rail hub. And it doesn't have, but it's not very big overall. It's not, there's not a lot going on in the way of people. It also had an airport, which was helpful. So, yeah, Amarillo did become, looking at the map now, Amarillo did become a fairly major facility. But there are definitely some that I'm missing, but those are the biggest ones. The thing to keep in mind is that we were mostly running trains from basically from eastern Pennsylvania area and western New York area, which is where a lot of our facilities were, and then over to Rhode Island if they needed to come there. That was our biggest shipping terminal. And then from there they would run either on a northerly route via IRM area, or the slightly more southerly route via the Age of Steam. And then they would either go via Cheyenne to Portland, or via Denver to Oakland and San Francisco, or they would run up over Marias Pass if there was a reason for them to do that. So we did use most of the passes in a limited capacity, but overall it was that corridor that we ran. So I hope that answers the question. I hope you guys enjoyed this episode of The Zombie Train, and I will see you next week, hopefully, with our review. Remember, if you want to submit, poke me on Discord.